What do they do with the aliens covered in knives? Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another episode in my Animorphs series. I am reading and recapping and reviewing every single book in the Animorphs series just for fun, just having a good time doing it. We're closing out 2020 with the 13th book in the Animorphs series. It has taken over a year, but we've got to book 13, The Change. Let's just take a moment to get really hyped about this cover because it has Tobias on it, which first off, I'm very excited about this, but also it has Tobias in bird form and boy form. And if you don't know why I'm excited about that, then you need to go back and watch all of the other videos. You just do. This book will not go well for you if you haven't read the others. Although, having been very excited about it, the tagline says "Be afraid," so this may not bode well. We open with a somewhat non-traditional Animorphs opening, because Tobias can tell us where he is, because he's not at an address, he's in a territory. And that's because, and I cannot stress enough how much this will not make sense if you have no idea what else I'm talking about and you haven't watched the previous videos. He's a human boy in the body of a hawk. So we open with Tobias swooping down on a mouse and he happens to catch a glimpse of a magazine with a picture of a classroom in it for some reason, and he reflects a bit on how nice it is to be a bird who can fly and flap around on various thermals, rather than being a bully magnet at school. He waves hello to Axe, their alien friend who lives in the woods, and then flies off to the school, prompted a little bit by that magazine, to go and spy on his friends, the other Animorphs, thus letting us know who they are, each in turn. These books are so perfect for not having read previous books and being brought up to speed. It's the standard Jake is the leader, Marco makes jokes, Cassie is the best. I mean, he doesn't say that, but she is. And then she stepped out into the sunlight and her blonde hair became a flame of pure gold. Rachel. All right, Hawk Boy, calm down. So Rachel's leaving her classroom and Tobias follows her and, they have a little bit of a chat in thought speak, but he spots something. Beneath the note that she's carrying was a fancy-looking sheet of stationery. It was a letter addressed to Rachel. It read, "Congratulations, you've been named a Packard Foundation Outstanding Student." I was about to add my own congratulations when I noticed the date. There was to be an awards ceremony Monday. This was Friday. It was the kind of thing that Rachel would have invited everyone to. Everyone but me. I can't exactly go to things like award ceremonies. Rachel hadn't even told me about it, and I knew why. Drama in the Animorphs team. But he's a hawk. He can't go to special ceremonies. Rachel knows this. She's trying to spare his feelings. It's fine. Sometimes I ask myself if I had to do it over again, if I could never become Tobias the hawk and only be Tobias the boy, would I actually do it? I don't think about it that often though. Maybe I didn't want to find out the answer. This is going to be an important theme of discussion for this book, but also I think one of the reasons I relate to Tobias on such an intense level is that I too overthink myself into a panic every 5 minutes. So while the others have been attending school and being teenagers and also Animorphs, but primarily doing the school thing, it takes up a lot of your time when you're a teenager. We can all remember. Tobias has been flapping about trying to find other entrances to the Yik pool, because remember they found a couple, but they've really given away where they were, so the Yiks clearly aren't using those too much anymore, or they are more defended. So instead, Tobias is flapping around, following various people they know to be controllers and kind of mapping out the extent of the Yik pool, which is bloomin' massive, by the way. It's worth noting that it's only at this point in the book, we've had quite a lot of stuff happen now, it's only at this point that Tobias tells us about the Yik invasion. I guess explaining the fact that he's a boy and a hawk kind of took precedence in this one. Tobias is flapping by the mall, cross that off your bingo lists, they go to the mall, when he spots a bald eagle, which wouldn't normally be there, unless the bald eagle is actually Rachel. Tobias not very subtly points out that he did in fact see that she got the award, and says, "Rachel, don't not tell me things because you're worried that you'll upset me." Honestly, this personal growth, it's so impressive. He's telling people about his feelings. We've not seen this in Animorphs books. Normally they just have incredibly weird things happen to them and keep it a secret because that's a good idea. "I don't feel sorry for you," Rachel lied. "Good, because how you think about me is sort of important." I winced. I'd sounded way too sincere. "You think Romeo and Juliet were doomed just from being from families that didn't like each other. Well, you can't get any more doomed than caring for someone who isn't even the same species." I think Tobias would have thrived on Tumblr. They set off for the car wash where there's an entrance to the Yik pool. Tobias, though he can normally find his way anywhere, ends up getting all kind of turned around and lost, and they end up definitely not where he was planning on going. And then something even weirder happens. A single huge oak tree was sliding to one side, just sliding, like it had no roots, like it was on a skateboard or something. A huge oak tree just slid over, and beneath the oak there appeared a hole in the ground. I had a better angle than Rachel, and I could see what was coming up from underground. I saw a snake-like head with huge forward-swept horns. I saw powerful shoulders and arms that were armed with blades at the elbows and wrists. I saw the big Tyrannosaurus feet, and the short-spiked tail, and the blades at the knees. I saw 7 feet of razor-bladed death. It's a hawk bajir. Quick recap in case you don't remember, Hawk-Bajir, very peaceful species, very lovely, enslaved completely by the Yeeks and turned into killing machines. An alarm sounds from under the wood where this hole has come from, but the Hawk-Bajir just start running away. Two Hawk-Bajir start running away. Rachel has about an hour of morph time left, so they decide to follow them. So then a bunch of human controllers also spill out of the hole armed with all sorts of weapons and follow the runaway Hawk-Bajir. So the Yeeks clearly want them back, but they don't want any more risk of humans seeing the Hawk-Bajir. The Yeek hunting party get on basically dirt bikes, which is funny to me because they have interstellar travel, but they're just like, yeah, motorbikes will work for the forest. The controllers gain on the Hawk-Bajir and they start firing. This is all going to be over in about 10 seconds, Rachel said grimly. What are we going to do? You want to help the Hawk-Bajir? I asked incredulously. Have you ever heard the saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend? The Yeeks want those two Hawk-Bajir dead. That's good enough for me. So Tobias and Rachel use thought speak to direct the probably very confused Hawk-Bajir away from the hordes of people who want to kill them and towards a nearby cave. The Hawk-Bajir don't seem to be all that bright, so Tobias resorts to going down and flying through the trees, risking his own life in order to direct them where to go. Going on with the theme of escalating peril that we've really seen in these books, there's now a helicopter coming that will definitely see where the Hawk-Bajir are. Rachel says her and Tobias are going to take out the guys on bikes with guns, because of course she is. She's Rachel. Why would she do anything else? So they manage to distract these people, they talon them, it's all good. One Hawk-Bajir manages to leap over these now stalled trucks and get away. The other one, though, doesn't manage it quite so well and she gets hit by a truck. The first Hawk-Bajir was up, but not running. I was close enough to hear him bellow in a voice full of despair. Kalashi, Kalashi! Move, you idiot! I screamed at the Hawk-Bajir. What a thoughtful hawk he is. The Hawk-Bajir froze and looked up at me as I shot past him, and he said, "No, my Kalashi, my wife." We've got Hawk-Bajir marriages. Be excited for this book. Tobias gets the Hawk-Bajir into the stream, which means they can then escape. And after all of that excitement, all of that peril, it's a straight jump to being back in Cassie's barn and debriefing with the rest of the group. How exactly do you tell a man Hawk-Bajir from a woman Hawk-Bajir? Marco asked. Did the women put makeup on their wrist blades? Do they use nail polish on those big nasty toes of theirs? Marco is the worst. He's the worst. Even though we're in the 90s, he's the worst. Marco keeps going, and I'm not going to read it all because it is just rubbish. I'm just going to take you right to the moment where Cassie, who has had enough of this, throws a snake at him. Ugh, Cassie. So do you remember how I talked about Tobias got all turned around before? And also how Tobias isn't the kind of person who would keep something weird that happened to them secret from their friends. Tobias just confesses. He just tells them, like, I was trying to go somewhere else and I ended up there. It was really weird. And they have kind of a minute discussion about what that might mean. But they don't really get to it. But the point is, he told them. I'm impressed. They put a pin in that for now, that very strange occurrence, and realise that they may be left with the only two free Hawk-Bajir in the entire galaxy. What on earth are they going to do with them? And somebody comes up with a pretty bright idea of maybe we should ask them? Then I guess that's step one, Jake said. Let's find out what the Hawk-Bajir wants. Everyone agreed, but I saw that Cassie was still troubled. Under her breath she muttered, and then let's find out why Tobias was somewhere he didn't mean to be. Axe and Tobias go to have a conversation with the Hawk-Bajir, and it's a prickly conversation at first, given that the Andalites have been killing the Hawk-Bajir and the Hawk-Bajir have been killing the Andalites, but Tobias is our conflict resolution expert, so he smooths things over. Oh, and we learn that the Hawk-Bajir's name is Jara Hamid. He's kidding, right? Jake said in my head. His name is Jeremy. I feel like now we've learned that it's best not to just anglicize the names of people, and you should try and pronounce them the way that they pronounce them and not just say, oh, you clearly said a name that I recognize, therefore I should say it. But it's 1997, so I'm not going to dwell on that too much. Also, he's a Hawk-Bajir, but I just, in general, don't do that. Jeremy says he is free from the Yeeks, and they say, well, you're going to need to prove that, because we've been tricked before. It might happen. And the way that he decides to prove that is to cut his head open and show them his brain. I mean, it works. He gets better very quickly, but it's a dramatic but very efficient way of proving something. I think we all saw this coming. Jeremy wants the Animorphs to help him get his wife back. But before we have any time to deal with that, the Yeeks are coming. They're basically surrounded. No time to do anything else. They need a distraction. I had a different idea. Unfortunately, it was a dangerous idea, a very dangerous idea, and the danger would all be on someone else, not me. That's right, one of them is going to have to morph into Jeremy. They do get his permission, it's fine. But obviously they can't reveal themselves to the Hawk-Bajir yet. They don't want him to know that they're humans in case he gets re-Yeekified. So he closes his eyes and Rachel goes in to try and acquire him. You don't have to do this, Rachel, I said. It's Rachel's greatest thrill, Marco said. More for Hawk-Bajir. Hey, she'll finally get to become on the outside what she's always been on the inside. So Rachel manages to morph Hawk-Bajir, which is apparently very disturbing, but she manages to kind of conquer that new morph mindset fairly quickly. Her and Jeremy butt heads a little bit, but apparently that's just sort of instinct. Tobias hitches a ride on Rachel's horn. Woof. And the two of them chase after the controllers. You guys, Cassie called down from above, stop chasing those controllers. They're setting up a trap. They're leading you right between two bunches of bad guys. I feel like it's not often that we actually manage to avoid a trap or spot a trap in advance in these books, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that. Tobias does another weird teleport that he doesn't really understand and we don't really understand, and he finds himself above another clearing with other things going on. He's watching a different Hawkbajir and another Andalite appear. And who's the only other Andalite body that we know? Ding ding ding, Visser 3 appears. Tobias enlists the help of a Swainson's hawk that happens to roost in the meadow, distracts Visser 3 long enough to get a swipe at his eye stalks, and him and Ket Halpak, I think that's her name, Ket Halpak, Jeremy's wife, managed to escape. So they've got out of that situation somehow, partly through Tobias's magical teleportation skills, but now there are all sorts of other issues at stake. I mean, what are they going to do with the two last Hawkbajir in the universe? Are they going to be grounded for staying out too late? Is it fair to ask Tobias to watch them all night? What do they do with the aliens covered in knives? But Tobias remembers he knows a valley in the mountains that might be the perfect place for two Hawkbajir to live. Right, now I need to think about what story I'm going to tell my dad when I get home, Marco said. Tomorrow we can worry about taking Adam and Eve Hawkbajir off to Tobias's Garden of Eden. Not a bad description, I thought. That was a little like what the valley was like. I could see the place as clearly in my mind as any place I'd ever been. There was just one problem, however. I'd never been there. I'd never actually seen it. Dun dun dun. Axe shows up, I think probably so that we can have a bit of dialogue rather than just Tobias' introspection for the whole book. Tobias has been listening to the Hawkbajir, where they're sitting in their secret hidden cave. I didn't mean to eavesdrop on them, I said, but it was easy for me to hear. They keep using some Hawkbajir word. It sounded like quatnodge. I shouldn't laugh. Tobias does mention now the weird things popping in his head to Axe. But before they can really delve into that, Tobias has another weird vision, and this time there are Taxons. Taxons, terrifying, centipede-y, killy creatures, those things, they are heading right for them. Can we throw the Taxons off the scent, I asked. No, if they've smelled these Hawkbajir, nothing will throw them off. Then we'll have to move the Hawkbajir. Now, Taxons can't be all that fast, but we need to move out. Axe, I can get the Hawkbajir started. I feel like this book would also really work in a Western setting. Like, across the desert, we must take these aliens covered in knives. I don't know. So they get a wiggle on and start moving through the night, trying desperately not to leave tracks. Where? Jeremy asked. Go where? I don't really know, I grumbled. I guess a little voice in my head will tell me. The Hawkbajir grunted like that made perfect sense. My head voice told me to run. They're getting weird visions too. Despite the fact that they are on the run from Taxons who could catch up to them at any moment, Tobias just stops and says, right, I'm not going any further until the weird voice in my head explains itself. Did anyone guess who responds? Who is responsible for this? It's the Alarmist! Da, 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 da. I looked down at my body, and somehow, in a way I can't explain, I seemed to be seeing through my body too. It was as if I could see everything, from every angle, all at once, like I was seeing myself through a million different eyes. I was no longer a red-tailed hawk, but I was no longer human either, at least not the way I had once been human. I had arms that were wings, I had legs that ended in talons, I had a beak, but it was a mouth too. I know it all sounds crazy, I know it's impossible to really imagine it very well, but somehow I was both a human and a bird, and some third thing that was in between the two. I'm just gonna plonk that existential crisis. We're gonna leave that there. So the Alarmist is getting involved because, as we remember, the Alarmist are kind of into endangered species, and we have the two last free Hawkbajir here. You want me to lead these Hawkbajir to this place you've put in my head? Fine, but I want to get paid for my services. And what do you want, Tobias? You know what I want, I said, almost choking on the words. You know. Yes, but do you know what you want, Tobias? The Alarmist asked. And if you get it, will you still know? Don't think Tobias has done much reading about how you should be careful what you wish for. And that feels risky to me at this stage. As a person who values being direct and to the point, I'm not a huge fan of the Alarmist. Oh, wholesome alert, in this quick little interlude we find out that the reason the Hawkbajir are so covered in like sharp objects is because they eat tree bark, so they have sharp objects to strip the bark off trees, and they were corrupted into this violent species by the Yix, but actually it's just part of how they work. They're not violent. Oh, it's so wholesome. Tobias flies off to get some dinner, pondering whether he'll still be able to morph if the Alarmist gives him his human body back, because apparently he's decided that that was definitely what the Alarmist interpreted his request as. While he's distracted during his hunt, he almost gets killed by a bobcat. The bobcat is then scared off by the Taxon who is behind him, a Taxon, and a whole army of Hork-Bajir and human controllers. Tobias manages to get back into the air and is met by the Animorphs in various forms, some of them in the air, some of them on the ground. We landed in the trees, and now we were facing a serious decision, a life and death decision. The others were all close to the 2-hour time limit. They needed to demorph, but so far we had not revealed our true species to the Hork-Bajir. If they were ever recaptured by the Yeerks would have access to everything in their heads, every memory. But they decide they have to do it, so they morph back, which tickles the Hork-Bajir absolutely pink. They find it hilarious that they are humans. And then they set off to look for Hork-Bajir Eden. But it's that escalating peril thing again, and now they're starting forest fires to try and flush them out, and there's a helicopter coming, and Tobias then manages to break his wing on the helicopter and fall back down to Earth, being unable to warn the others. So he's fallen on the floor, he can't move, he's got a broken wing, and he's now food for a raccoon who's turned up. Just as the raccoon is taking Tobias over to the water to figure out which bits of him he wants to eat, which is apparently what raccoons are doing. They're not like washing it, they're like checking it over, and it's easier to do when it's wet. Who knew? That may be 1990s science, I don't know for sure that that's true. At that point, the Elemist shows up and asks Tobias if he wants his payment now. Tobias says, yes, of course I do, but then he's still a hawk. But he does have morphing powers, so he acquires and morphs into the raccoon. After struggling as a raccoon for a while, because he's not quite sure what he's meant to be doing, Tobias realises that he can morph back to Hawk and the DNA will be fixed, because that's how morphing works. You can morph out and fix everything, basically. The helicopters were a mile away, maybe a little more, so I heard nothing of them, but as I watched, I saw the sudden red spear that shot down to the ground. Again and again and again, the helicopters fired their blazing Draken beams down at dry trees and even drier underbrush. They were starting a forest fire. I might have revealed that too early, but yeah, they're starting a forest fire. This time, Tobias is the man, the hawk, with the plan, and so he is going to morph into Ket, Mrs. Hork-Bajir. The first part of Tobias's plan is that Rachel and Tobias, in Hork-Bajir form, make their way through the forest that is rapidly catching on fire, with Jake directing them from above. They manage to get to the end of the ravine that they were trying to get to, and Rachel Hork-Bajir leaps off the edge into the abyss. Tobias tries to follow her off the edge, but he gets cut off by none other than Visser 3. Still pretending to be Ket Halpak, Tobias charges at Visser 3 with an attempt to shove him off the edge as well, but Visser 3 steps out of the way just in time, because he's apparently back into slick villain form in this one, and Tobias leaps off the edge of the cliff and gets caught by Marco in gorilla form, pulled into the side of the ravine where they can't be spotted, and down at the bottom of the ravine are seemingly 2 dead Hork-Bajir being eaten by wolves. I should say eaten by wolves. That's where the inverted commas come in there. Visser 3 makes the catastrophic evil villain error of not checking that the people that you think are dead, or indeed the aliens that you think are dead, are in fact dead. And he just walks off, probably laughing maniacally. The entrance to the valley was so narrow the Hork-Bajir could barely fit between the rock walls. It was like some amazing bandit hideout from an old western movie. I hadn't realised, but this is like a western story. How nice. I hadn't made that connection. Jake said, you know, I wonder if this valley even existed before. You think maybe the Elemist created it? I asked. Jake shrugged. Could be. It's awfully convenient. Google Maps would have really scuppered this plan. Good place, Ket Halpak said. Good place for Quatnodge. What? Jake asked, puzzled. I heard them use the word before. Jerahami, what does Quatnodge mean? Jerahami and Ket Halpak laughed their strange Hork-Bajir laugh. Quatnodge, small Hork-Bajir. Small Jerahami, small Ket Halpak. Children, Rachel translated. They're going to have a little baby Hork-Bajir. Baby. He's annoyed. He's not got what he wanted. He has his morphing powers, but he cannot be himself. And Rachel turns up to try and comfort him, and that doesn't really work. Axe turns up. That doesn't work either. And then we have another weird moment where Tobias has a time travel dream. So in this dream / it's genuine time travel, he visits himself the day before they got Andalite powers. I wasn't Tobias the human. I had become something else, something new. What had the Elemist said? You are a beginning. You are a point on which an entire timeline may turn. He sort of vaguely tells himself, you know, tomorrow you need to go walk through the building site with Jake, because he's found that despite everything that's happened, despite all the bad things, it's definitely worth it. As kind of a last thought, Tobias acquires his own human DNA, thus proving that this was genuine time travel, which so many different complicated things happening here, but let's just focus on the fact that Tobias can be a boy again. The Elemist does show up to kind of rub it in, like, ha ha ha, you see, I did in fact give you what you wanted. Tobias goes to Rachel's ceremony in human form and kind of lurks at the back, and the book ends with her seeing him for the first time since the start of the series. She stopped walking. She turned to me. Her eyes were wide. Hi, Rachel, I said with a human voice. I have a strong feeling, and we're going back, you know, over 10 years at this point. I have a strong feeling that this was one of the books that I read from the library, because I definitely remember Tobias changing back. I have a recollection of that happening, and I think I must have read this book before. But oof, is it more emotional when you read it in the context of the other 13 books? Whew. There's honestly not that much to mock and or scorn in this one. It's just good Tobias content, which I love. I did skip the bit where Marco told Rachel to take her clothes off because they were in Hawkbajir Eden, by the way. I didn't think we had to endure that. Oh, I'm losing my voice and my memory card is oh so full. So thank you very much for joining me for the last Animorphs video of this year. Next year promises at least 12 more Animorphs videos. I am hoping to do a few more, but more on that in the future. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was interesting. I hope you're enjoying this series. If you haven't watched all of them already, it's still... playlist is all linked, it's all wonderful, and check out my other videos while you're here. Comment below with which one has been your favourite of either this year or the whole series so far. I would like to know. You can also, while you're down there commenting, you can follow me on all of my social media, that's all linked. You can subscribe because it makes me feel loved and appreciated, and I put out a lot of non-Animorphs content. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. There's gonna be some bloopers now. She stepped out into the sunlight, and her blonde hair became a flame of pure blah. It sounded like quatnodge. Something like that anyway. I will not laugh at the word quatnodge. It just sounds like a really good insult. You're quatnodge. Just as the raccoon is taking... that's just me, my notes.